Hello and welcome to Risk and Regulation series brought to you by Regulation Asia. My name is Bradley McLean, co-founder and editorial director at Regulation Asia, and I'm excited to have us with today a conversation that cuts straight to the heart of the biggest challenges facing financial institutions in 2025. Our discussion today is on red lines and key zones, taking sanction screening beyond name matching in an interconnected world. Now, that sounds serious, and that's because it is. The global sanctions landscape has never been more volatile or complex, and for institutions across the region, the stakes have never been higher. In a world where geopolitical tensions are escalating, supply chains are ever more interconnected than ever, and sanctions, tariffs, and export controls are evolving at a breakneck speed, compliance is no longer just a regulatory requirement, it's a survival strategy. The days of simply matching names on a government-issued list are over. But how do we move forward? How do financial institutions adapt to this fast-changing environment, rethink their strategies, and leverage emerging technologies like AI, machine learning to not only stay compliant, but stay ahead of the curve? And that's exactly what brings us here today. And to help unpack all of this, I'm thrilled to be joined by none other than Ricky Butler, head of propositions at Asia Pacific at Dow Jones. Ricky brings deep expertise in helping institutions across the region navigate these challenges with clarity and confidence. So with that, welcome, Ricky.
Hi, how you doing, Brad? Thank you for having me on.
Fantastic. I'm super excited to delve into this. And I guess first things first, I'm quite keen to get your thoughts. You know, we're living in a very, let's call it fluid time. I mean, from your perspective, how do you see the evolving geopolitical landscape reshaping the nature of risks that, institutions face in sanctions compliance? And I guess more importantly, where do you see these red lines and how are they changing?
I think we're seeing seismic changes in how countries deal with each other and what countries are talking to who, what tariffs are being applied, and the weapons of choice that they're using to try and influence behaviors. From a compliance point of view, I think it's to get very specific and delving into it. I think we are seeing quite a shift in terms of the red lines used to be in terms of well, first off, there's a shift into governments using sanctions and tariffs as a weapon of choice to try and influence other countries, and with tariffs also potentially other companies as well. So that's the first shift, which has seen a huge increase in the volumes of sanction changes. So the number of people and entities on sanction lists have increased. So companies have to screen against a larger data set. So that's the first shift that we're seeing. Secondly is the shift is the enforcers saying don't deal with sanctioned entities. They're saying don't enable them in any way. So you can't finance them. You can't provide logistics, tech support. You can't sell them chips. You need to understand in much greater detail what you're financing. If you're looking at trade finance, you need to look at where your goods are going. You need to look at your supply chain. So we're seeing huge changes, and that's causing huge headaches for compliance officers to try and get their head around. And I think the challenges will be as we seem to be diverging a little bit, the US versus the EU and China, and they're diverging on sanctions and particularly dubious goods. I think for global companies with global operations, it's going to be hard to look at that to stay on top of things, particularly given the speed of change at the moment.
So when we look at that speed of change, why is it so difficult? Especially when we start looking at name screening. I mean, this is nothing new. I mean, the names themselves might be new, but these requirements are nothing new. So why does it remain or continue to be so difficult?
So when I talked about the shift and the red line shift, and we talked about the increased volume of names, so there's more names on the list. Also, the shift is to indirect sanctions. So it's not just the name on the list, it's any company that they own or control. So the 50% ruling. So you now have exponentially increased the volume and the list that you're screening against. I think name screening is kind of like the same old problem. I've been in this industry with regards to KYC and starting off with selling a PEP screening database. And that's 18 years ago. And people were talking about false positives. And they're talking about the quality of data that they have. So the quality of data in their systems is the first name in the first name field, is the last name in the last name field. Do we have more than those pieces of information to screen against? For example, do you have a date of birth? Are all the date of births in your various systems in the same format? So those quality of data issues cause huge concerns with regards to the effectiveness of screening. On the other side, it's the data that you're screening against has to be high quality and structured well. We are a provider of such lists, and that's what we say. The structure and quality enables you to integrate our data into technology, which is the third piece. So there's three legs on this stool, if you like, and the technology will play the role in trying to wrap that all up together. Um, but it is fundamentally a very difficult thing culturally. I'm Irish. There's a lot of Murphys in Ireland, for example. There's a lot of Singhs in India. There's a lot of Lees in Asia. There's a lot of very common names. And if you don't have good technology, you can get a huge number of false positives if you don't have good data, you're just not screening against good data, and you're using good technology to leverage that as well. So I think the last problem is that a lot of banks have systems in place and they're probably creaking at the edges, but if it isn't broke, they're not going to fix it. And I think they probably have greater, more competing issues that they need to invest in and change and upgrade systems on.
I mean, the challenge there is, they might have greater, more pressing issues, but if they get it wrong, right, there's a cost of non-compliance when it comes to this, right?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We're looking at so when you look at this, you're looking at the false positives increasing, and that's the searching for a needle in the haystack scenario. You are looking for that one true positive in a sea of false positives. The risk of getting it wrong is massive. There's reputational issues. If it's a systematic issue, it's even greater. You can get a much greater fine. It's something that banks are throwing a lot of resources at this to try and fix. And I think that is proportionate to the risks that they're facing in terms of fines or reputational risks as well.
I guess if we just take a step back, I mean, from your perspective, what are the implications of high rates of false positives in traditional names matching for corporate decision making and other risk management?
Well, the cost is at the moment, it seems to be humans and a lot of them. We see financial institutions and other institutions who, when they've had to screen if they have poor policies and procedures in place. So, for example, they might cast their net too broadly and say that we want to screen against everything. They might screen that and then get a huge volume of names. So, a huge volume of names against a huge volume of matches. These alerts need to be cleared. So, um, you have immediately a mountain to climb to try and clear and work through that. So, I think at the very beginning, companies need to take the risk-based approach. They need to work out exactly what they're looking to screen against and why they're looking to screen against that. And that can have a big impact on the outcome. If you don't, it is the way I have seen it is humans looking, just plowing through false positives, just flicking through screens. And a lot of them you can clearly see this guy is not that guy, or this company is not that company. And there is information there, but they're in disparate systems and they're not talking together. And they just need a human to come in, stitch it all together and say, not a match, log that into the system and let it on. Um, the implications of that, if you're looking to send a SWIFT payment, is delayed deadline. If you have a huge volume of these going through your SWIFT payments, you might have delayed payments, which would be detrimental to your bank offering. It can has potential liquidity issue knock-ons as well. The regulatory fines, the regulatory cost increases, the effectiveness drops as well. False positives are one of these old headaches that we've been talking about for years, and they don't seem to be going away, but they still are the same old problems and persistent.
So why are they so persistent?
I think if it's not broke, don't fix it. I think, we're talking about AI at the moment. There's a lot of talk about AI. I have not seen, broadly speaking, being used to increase the efficiency of compliance officers as of yet. I think we see the use of AI using our technology, our data, talking to our customers. They're trying to highlight risks, for example, credit risks by monitoring news. They're trying to look at other data to identify different things. I don't see them trying to throw AI at making the decision-making process quicker on this. I have seen regulators turn around and say that people do need to start using AI to increase efficiencies and not just as a way to make or save money. And I do think you will see the role of AI play a much greater role in making the efficiencies for compliance managers much greater. As it gets in, AI that we've seen in a very real way. When we started this off, it was very structured data, cell A, cell B, and you'd be looking individually at that. We started our business selling structured data. Now, in a world of multiple data sources and a lot of it unstructured, you'll see AI being able to crawl over that and coherently summarize something. So to do a lot of that repetitive and boring work, you are slowly seeing that coming in. But I think it will be in the next few years, hopefully, that we see the adoption coming through in banks and we see the benefits of that coming through.
So you've mentioned, a couple of times AI and efficiencies, and I totally see the role in operational efficiencies and the use of AI. But from your perspective, where is the role of AI in helping balance effectiveness?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the role of AI, if you can get rid of the repetitive, mundane tasks that are clogging up the workload of multiple people, I think you can free them up to think of better ways to do it, to be more effective in how they're doing it. So by freeing up the staff, you can and that labor, you can redeploy it at ensuring that you're increasing your effectiveness. So I do think there is a link in there. Um, I think it allows you to train up on these systems. You can further deploy, AI training in terms of how to use AI or Gen AI search to be able to search through a large number of research docs if you're performing due diligence, for example. So instead of spending time just plugging through Google, if you elevate it into better systems, using AI and using a reliable database, you will be able to elevate that researcher's time and to be able to be more effective and to search more effectively.
I mean, the old adage is we live in interesting times. And I think the last couple of weeks have proven that we generally live in quite interesting times, if not chaotic. I mean, from your perspective, what do you see are the biggest supply chain risks, institutions in Asia should be really prepared for in the coming year and beyond?
Yeah, quite a lot. I think I think supply chain risk is probably one of the key issues when you talk to people. So I'm speaking in this on behalf of the Dow Jones is a Chief Compliance Officer Council. We get a lot of feedback from Chief Compliance Officers. We get weekly summaries, and recently they were talking about the key issues. Supply chain is definitely one of them. Trump 2.0 and what will that bring? There seems to be a massive change from day to day in terms of tariffs. They're on, they're off, they're on again. There are some exemptions, and you can see that reflected in the stock market as well. The supply chain people were already looking to diversify their supply chain around Asia. And I think if you are looking to make decisions like that in terms of diversification of a supply chain, it's not something that can be done overnight. So I do think I think companies will be taking the long-term view of this. I saw a very interesting quote in the Wall Street Journal by Scott Lincoln. He's a vice president and general economics and trade policy at the Cato Institute, the libertarian think tank. He said, uh, even when you think you're playing by the rules and sacrificing a bit for the team, the rules might change tomorrow and you're going to get hit again. It's a brutal environment for folks who are looking to spend billions of dollars on a 30-year project. So if you are looking to move your supply chain around, it does take a long time, and the volatility in the market, I think, lends itself to people being a little bit more cautious and optimistic with their development and their long-term infrastructure. And at the moment, they're probably just looking at employing a wait and see attitude. I think in the background, they will be doing a ton of scenario planning. So for this supply chain, trying to work out a web through the tariffs that are incoming. But I think at the moment, it's probably best just to wait and see. Who knows what the
So
future will bring.
you're not expecting any knee-jerk reactions and corporates nearly changing their risk profiles to respond to the new kind of realities, but more of a wait and see.
Yeah, exactly. I do see that. Or you see, for example, you see the Trump administration has pulled back in the enforcement of anti-corruption, for example.
Yep.
So that's an example where you do not see companies suddenly changing their policies and procedures. Interestingly, you can see collaboration between Europeans and the UK who seem to be picking up the baton. So maybe the Europeans will start pushing the anti-corruption agenda. But companies know that this Trump administration will leave eventually. He's on a second term. If he can get a third term, we'll see about that. But this administration will leave and the pendulum will swing. And we can always see that a lot of these fines look back retrospectively as well. So people, I think, in terms of companies looking at the risk, they'll be looking at the long term as well.
When we look at these short to medium terms risks and changes and volatility from the perspective of name screening, I mean, do you see there's going to be any likely impact to sanctions, name screening, or any of those other obligations?
Yeah, absolutely. I think as you see AI and as you see technology coming into the compliance world, I think you will start seeing it being able to be more effective, more efficient in its name screening, getting through a lot of that grunt work that the compliance managers might have to do, and hopefully, in a way, elevating them. We can see that in terms of our research team who are building large data sets. We still need to have them and their expertise. We talked earlier about naming conventions and cultural naming differences. These are the final lines in our defense before we put data into our system. They leverage all the AI and machine learning that they can, but we need the researchers there to make sure that everything is good and give it a sense check as well. I do think you're going to see AI technology enhancing compliance folks world in the next few years. It's going to be a very interesting time to see the advancements being made.
For you, what are the top of mind advancements that you think are going to be the most to have the biggest impact?
So we've gone from KYC, know your customer. We're now talking about KYCC, know your customer's customer. So we need to cast our net wider, and we need to look at more data as well. Previously, you could just check if they were on a PEP list or maybe a subset of a sanctioned list, and that would have been okay, tick the box. Now you need to screen against all of that. You need to screen against some structured adverse media or internal blacklists that you have in your bank. Now also you need to monitor global media, unstructured data. You need to get your head around that, all the different languages, all the different worlds, and try and map that on top of your customers and your supply chain, looking for risks that are relevant for you. And obviously, you look at a bank, the customers may be all at the same profile, but if they're looking at their supply chain, that will be totally different. So you need to get in there and work out, highlight the risks, do your risk-based approach, highlight the risks, and put in your policies and procedures to make sure that you're directing your efforts to offset these risks.
Wonderful. So again, as we look to the next 12 months for you, what's on the horizon that either has you most excited or most concerned?
I don't know if I could use the word excited. I don't know if I am overly concerned. It is definitely interesting, though. I think we are going to see the tariffs play out in the next few months. There's a 90-day extension. There's a lot of negotiations underway. How those negotiations go will be very interesting to see and how it impacts the rest of the world. Obviously, in Asia, we are seeing China increase its meetings with its neighboring countries as they try to exert their influence and to fill the void with the removal a lot of US aid and US investment and also from the imposition of tariffs. So I think we need to see how this plays out. I don't have a crystal ball. I can't see what's coming around the corner, but I do know it's going to be very interesting, and I'll continue to every morning wake up and open my news app and see what am I going to be reading today.
I guess watch this space, right?
Exactly.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for joining us today for this episode of Risk and Regulation series brought to you by Regulation Asia. A huge thank you to Ricky Butler for sharing his invaluable insights on how businesses, financial institutions can navigate the shifting sanctions landscape. As we've heard today, the stakes have never been higher. The days of simply name screening are long gone, and institutions now have to tackle geopolitical instability, supply chain risks, and emerging threats with agility and precision. With that, thank you for listening. Stay ahead, stay agile, and stay compliant. Until next time, I'm Brad McLean from Regulation Asia. Thank you very much, and goodbye.